Welcome, college basketball fans, to the Full Court Press Podcast with LT and Sammy D. This is the podcast that brings you legendary stories from college basketball's golden era and dives in deep with a current analysis of today's game. Get ready for the most energetic and entertaining college basketball podcast around. Let's get it.
All right, fans, Sam is gone, so when Sam is gone, I can play. Luke Taylor here, Full Court Press, a college basketball experience. I'm really excited to have this next guest, but don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We're still stuck on number 43, Eldon Campbell. We want to get to Derek Coleman with 5-star reviews, so if you can, we'd appreciate it. But we got a really nice guest here, a really great guest. 30-plus years as a college head Division I coach. From Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which, you know, I reside in Akron, Ohio. Go Browns. I knew he was going to say go Steelers. But we got Santa Clara Broncos head coach Herb Sendek on the Full Court Press. Welcome, Coach.
Thank you, Luke. Great to be together with you.
Yeah. We were talking a little bit off air and stuff like that. I mean, you've got a really great background and unique background, but even more so, you got a lot of players coming back.
We do. We were really fortunate that we did not lose anybody to the portal last year. We were one of a handful of schools that experienced that good luck. And so we do have some continuity. We do have great stability from last year to this year. And so hopefully, that'll pay some dividends for us because we do like our group and they're familiar with our system and certainly our culture.
Yeah. And it's really, I mean, the WCC, I didn't realize the WCC has been around since 1952. And you guys have been around, Santa Clara, not you, but Santa Clara in particular, has been it since day one. I mean, that's with everything going around. And I guess there's a rumor I started that you pushed out Gonzaga. You finally got rid of them, huh?
Yeah, not really, not true. Gonzaga was great for our league.
Yep.
What an amazing program that they've been able to sustain for decades now. So certainly it wasn't to our league's advantage to lose them to the Pac-12. Nothing but the utmost respect for with Coach Few, his staff, and his predecessors and the administration that Gonzaga has been able to accomplish.
Yeah, but I guess what we're getting to is with the WCC that you guys will survive, you'll thrive. I mean, you're adding Grand Canyon, which has done a fantastic job. I mean, you know a little bit about Grand Canyon for being Arizona State, but this league is going to be like really good when you look at Gonzaga, St. Mary's, San Francisco. You guys. I mean, Loyola Marymount will be improved. But all these teams will get improved. You look at your team. I mean, you got the Frenchmen back. All WCC, and it's kind of interesting, which I love to hear these stories, is you have a player coming back from LSU.
We do. Not only did we not lose anybody to the portal, but we brought Carlos Stewart back after losing him to the portal the year before.
How does that conversation go, Coach? I mean, you obviously had that conversation and what have you, but did he text you? Did he call you? Did he text an assistant? How did that work?
Yeah. So, Carlos decided after 1 year at LSU that he was going to put his name in the portal. When he did that, we obviously had a chance to have a phone conversation. It wasn't a drawn-out recruiting process. I think for all intents and purposes, he wanted to come back home to Santa Clara, and we welcomed him with open arms.
Yeah, there was no no interview process, no hey, are you sure? It was just and I guess nowadays everybody talks about all these players leaving, but you brought a player back, as did Billy Gillespie. I mean, who you probably know personally from Tarleton State. He's bringing back his leading scorer from Arkansas State. So
yeah, it doesn't happen too often, but in this case, for sure, we're, really happy that Los is back with us after being a first-team all-conference guard the year before.
Yeah. So how are you going to share the ball? Because there's only one basketball. You got Ball, you got Brian, you got the German Tilly, you got another German coming in, you got Johnny O'Neill. Then you have Alan Graves, who's a stellar freshman coming in from Louisiana. You got Carlos coming back. How are you going to let them let them share that basketball? Because you got a lot of scores, you got a lot of players too.
Yeah, well, if you want to be a good basketball team, if you want to be an efficient offensive team, you have no alternative but to share the ball. You know, you're not going to win games if you don't share the ball. So if you want to win, there really is no other way to play. And so we're going to share the ball. We have a very high character quotient. Our guys understand what's a good shot and what isn't a good shot. I think we're very clear about that. At the same time, though, they're going to be given a tremendous amount of freedom to play basketball. We don't puppeteer or micromanage every muscle movement they have on offense, but it goes without saying, we have to play together. We have to make each other better. The ball has to move, and we've got to execute to get high quality, high percentage shots.
So you've been at Santa Clara. You've had a really, winning record in conference and out of conference. You started there in 2016. What was your kind of impressions before that? Because you've been at Arizona State, North Carolina State, Miami of Ohio, which we talked about, Kentucky, Providence. I mean, you're born and raised Pittsburgh. I guess, what was your impression of the WCC back then, and what is your impression of it now?
Well, I had nothing but the utmost respect for the WCC, as I do college basketball in general. I think the differences between programs, teams, is oftentimes, most times, negligible and not nearly as disparate as sometimes people would have you to believe if you listen to them. All you have to do is watch what happens this November, non-conference. And there won't be a night that goes by that, people won't raise their eyebrows when they look at the scores. And then the same thing happens in March Madness. The only difference is more people are paying attention. And so there's a lot of really high level coaches, players across the country, and as we know now, around the world. And so I have initially, Luke, to answer your question, great respect for this league. It's been a long-standing, outstanding basketball league with tremendous coaches. And, I think over the last handful of years, it has only gotten better and continues to do so because to a school, greater investments are being made. Competition is, helping all of us improve. Iron sharpens iron. And so I think you see that happening in our conference from top to bottom. And, as much as I'd like to say, hey, the WCC is the only place that's happening, that's not the case either.
Right.
There just simply is great competition across the board in college basketball.
Yeah. And you look at your schedule, for instance. I mean, I looked at your schedule. I really like your schedule. That's a tough schedule. St. Louis, you're going all the way to Sioux Falls, South Dakota to play St. Louis, who's going to be a really good team in November. So at least you're not going to Sioux Falls in January or February. You play Arizona State. You play Arizona State, you know that about them. Nevada, Coach Alford always has competitive teams. Stanford, TCU with Coach Dixon, McNeese State with Coach Wade, and then Brian Wardle, who we've had both these guys from Bradley. You have a really good, to basketball purists, that's a really good non-conference schedule.
Yeah, and I appreciate you ticking off some of those games we have, but, you could keep going. Our non-conference schedule not only includes the teams you mentioned, but many more that are going to require us to be at our best on a nightly basis. So, it's very purposeful. We want to play the best competition we can. Scheduling is a very difficult proposition for us. So sometimes we have to play games, in places or against teams that, you may not immediately connect, but we're doing it. And looking forward to a great great challenge.
Yeah. How difficult, I mean, you've been around, I mean, you probably helped with scheduling even back when you were an assistant. How difficult now in this day and age, and this has kind of been the biggest crux of every especially mid-major college basketball coach. How difficult for you guys, because I kind of put the WCC in your program more as a high major than a mid-major, especially when you throw in your program, Gonzaga and St. Mary's, what they've done in the past. How difficult was it for you this year in particular to put this strong of a schedule together?
It's extremely difficult. Jason Ludwig on our staff is the point person, and um, I think he calls just about everybody and anybody multiple times. And
Mhm.
there's a couple of um, factors before you even start. Number one, the West Coast simply has fewer schools to
Mhm.
play than the East Coast. So from a travel standpoint, there you start with fewer options
Mhm.
unless you're really going to travel.
Or
Okay.
unless your coach, or unless, sorry to cut you off, but unless you're coaching in Ohio, which has like 3,000 Division I programs in Ohio.
Right. So,
Yeah.
that's my point. There are just fewer opportunities to schedule in our footprint.
Mhm.
Second, as conferences have expanded and in some cases gone to 20 or more games, there's just less non-conference inventory.
Mhm.
So before you even pick up your first phone call, right, you're dealing with those two um, limitations, if you will. And
Mhm.
then from there, everybody's trying to, be strategic. Everyone's trying to look at the metrics. Everyone's trying to balance their home, away, and neutral slights. Everybody's jockeying for the best MTE. Um, so it could be a challenging process. But Jason did a great job with the schedule this year. From the first night out all the way through the conclusion, we're going to play against great competition.
Yeah. And is it kind of that you've been your whole kind of ammo all the years you've coached, whether it's Miami, Ohio, NC State, Arizona State, you'll play anybody, anywhere, anytime?
It depends. I mean, we've had teams where that didn't make the most sense.
Mhm.
As we've tried to build programs, and the criteria for getting in the NCAA tournament has
Mhm.
changed and
Mhm.
seemingly remains somewhat fluid.
Right.
Uh, and so you try to adapt and evolve not only with where your program is, but also as a function for, you know, as a function of, what the committee is putting the most value in. And clearly right now, having opportunities to play quad one and quad two games and hopefully win enough of them is paramount in the committee's eyes. And so we have
Right.
to be aware and respectful of that and try to schedule accordingly.
Yeah, yeah, and it's going to be, and it'll be interesting. I know some teams struggle. The better the team in that mid-major bracket, the tougher it is to schedule. I mean, we've interviewed people even this week and last week that still, they just got their last game cemented on the
Yeah.
schedule. I mean, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
and a part of that, quite frankly, is some guys they won't make a decision. I mean,
Yeah,
we deal with that in scheduling too. You think you have a game, and they're always looking for just a little bit better option, or they're just
right.
not quite sure.
Yep.
And so sometimes it comes down to, hey, do you want to play or not?
You've been around too long to just kind of waste time. It's like, do you want to play or not? And if not, let's keep moving, right?
Yeah, let's get on with it. And
Yeah.
that's not always the case, but I think that factors in sometimes to the lateness of the process.
Right, right, right. So it's been interesting. I mean, your background is, I mean, you've always been a very good X and O's coach, but you've also been known as a wonderful recruiter. And one comes to mind, Arizona State, James Harden. You look at back when you recruited him to Arizona State, and you look at today's kind of landscape. How different would you think that recruiting process would have been for James Harden and some of the other, All Americans you recruited to the different schools you're at?
Well, it would have been fundamentally different.
Hmm.
Obviously, NIL is a complete and total game changer. And
Hmm.
so, the best players are commanding the most NIL money. So, you couldn't recruit somebody of this stature of James without
Mm-hmm.
having a robust NIL bucket.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's kind of like, man, I could have gotten that guy, but it's crazy what some of these players were commanding, and they're averaging 10, 11, 12 points a game. I mean, I'm not going to say who, but it's crazy. It's like you're hearing some of these numbers throw out. It's like really? I mean, come on.
Yeah, no, the money um, has escalated incredibly
Yeah.
over even the last year. You
Well, it's
know,
yeah, and a lot of it comes to desperation, right? Like, hey, I need a player. I'm going to pay. I guess it's really
yeah,
supply and
well,
demand.
that and there's market competition,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And we have a very competitive, fiercely competitive sport and industry, and
Mhm.
that's what the market ends up doing.
Yeah. 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 Well, it seems like you're embracing it. So you had 8 weeks this summer. I don't know if you used them all, and you've obviously had some preseason or in season now practices. Is there any kind of couple players that have kind of surprised you?
I don't think so. I think the advantage we have this year is we know our players much
Mhm.
better than we did um, a year ago at this time. Now, that's not to intimate that they haven't changed or continue to improve, but we just have a much better feel, knowledge base for our team and our players than we did. We just don't have that many newcomers, and
Mhm.
so I don't know that if you use the word surprised, I don't think so.
Right.
We've had guys continue to get better, but that's not a surprise.
Right. Right. So you're happy with where you guys are at. I mean, you're going to be
I
tested
didn't
right
say that.
from Okay, I'm sorry to put words in your mouth, coach. I was
No,
hoping you were thinking that. I was getting that vibe, but I guess not. But
I'm just kidding.
no, you're all good. You're all good. So we do this little section called the shot clock, and it's just kind of some rapid fire questions. Some are thought provoking, some are, one word answers, some are kind of more, might lead to a story. But you have at it. Usually Sam sets me up, but I got to do it all myself. So, one word to describe Santa Clara.
Um, I gotta think about that, Luke, because I wasn't locked in when you asked me that question, and it was such a bullseye
Yeah,
that you knocked me back on the rope. So let's try that again. One word to describe
Santa Clara.
Santa Clara.
You've been there, you've been there since 2016, so hopefully there's at least one word.
Yeah, connected,
Okay. One word to describe the WCC.
competitive,
Okay. One word to describe Rick Pitino.
brilliant.
Yeah. I feel like he's going to coach till he's like 210. He's going to like coach his great great grandsons. I mean, he's just
Yeah, I'm going to tell you this. He works out more than most 20-year-olds we know, and he's probably in better shape physically than most 30-year-olds we know. I mean, the guy is a machine when it comes to taking care of himself.
yeah, yeah. And he wears nice suits too. So let's be honest.
He does.
Um, Toughest place to play in the WCC.
The next game you have on the
I
road.
love it. I love it. Isn't that the truth though?
It so much is. I mean, I know where you're going with that question, like
Yeah.
who has the loudest crowd and all those kind of things. But when you're actually going through it, when you're living the, you know, the grind of the conference season, I promise you, in your belly and in your heart, the
Mhm.
next game on the road is always the toughest. It's the one you got to win the most.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the truth. It's very difficult to win, and it's very difficult to win in conference. It's just a different animal, right?
It is, and so the next that's an easy one. The next game.
Were there any places you've coached at in your career, not just at Santa Clara, but whether it's Miami, Ohio, even as assistant at Kentucky or Province, were there any arenas you just really didn't love going to coach at?
Not really.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I never thought about it like that. I
yeah,
always, you know, um, yeah, I mean, I love coaching and
right.
all the arenas, the court
Yeah.
was the same side, the baskets were the same height.
Supposedly they're the
Well, I
same
guess the only
height.
anomaly now that one of the biggest anomalies would be the Vanderbilt experience at Memorial Gym,
Yeah.
coaching from the baselines. I guess the other ones to categorize that I'm probably not as fond of is the ones that have the court put on ice, on top of ice. The ones that have a dual purpose of
Mhm.
hockey and basketball. Those sometimes can be problematic.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Toughest recruit you ever got? What was the toughest recruit to ever sign?
You mean like the most fierce recruiting battle?
Yeah.
Those aren't the guys we typically get. Like most of the guys we get, we don't, engage in this tremendous warfare.
Mhm.
Usually the guys we get, we just get like
Yeah.
we have a great connection. They visit, they like it, and they join us.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they're not recruited by their schools, but
Mhm.
um, I mean, perhaps my memory. I'm sure I'm not thinking of some really great battles that we had, but
Mhm.
typically the guys we get, like I said, they just end up coming to us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're obviously doing something right. Funniest recruiting story. What's one funny recruiting story that comes out of your mind?
Oh my goodness.
I know
Funny
there's been a
recruiting
lot.
story. Um, yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot. I
Yeah,
apologize.
you're putting me on the spot, and I'm going to plead the fifth because I don't want to
W- we've
burn
had some,
anybody. I don't
yeah,
want to burn anybody here on this
yeah, we've had some good
family
ones.
friendly podcast.
Oh yeah, it's real family friendly. It's funny. We've had stuff from like bad chili to being bit by a dog to calling the
Yeah,
mother the wrong name for an hour to going to a high school gym and it's at the wrong place and no one's there and they drove 4 hours each way. We've
yeah,
had some pretty funny ones, but
yeah.
that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay. All right. Biggest coaching role model and best advice.
You know, I've been blessed to have so many great coaching models, and it really started growing up in Pittsburgh. The
Mhm.
coaches I played for, the coaches who were in Pittsburgh at that time at the college level. Um, Certainly, my father, who was a coach and had me in gym since the time I was in diapers, and then the coaches that I've worked together with and learned from through the years.
Mhm.
But if you go back to that time in Pittsburgh when I was going to school, when I was growing up. Um, like I said, certainly my father. Um, there was a coach at the Community College of Allegheny County, Bill Shea,
Mhm.
who's just amazing. Certainly Coach Gergerich, who was at Pitt at the time. My college coach, Dave Maloney. Um, my first job was a volunteer assistant at Central Catholic.
Mhm.
And, I hope with all of these changes
Mhm.
that our profession never loses that,
Mhm.
because those guys were my heroes. And
Mhm.
probably like so many of us who got into the business of coaching, they were the deciding factor. Hey, I want to be like Coach Shea. I want to
Mhm.
be like Coach Maloney or Coach Gergerich. You know, um, that was the real inspiration.
Yeah. 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 Now you're a smart guy. You went to Carnegie Mellon or Mellon, Carnegie Mellon.
Mega.
Uh, yeah, you're a smart guy. You got to have some good grades. If you weren't a college basketball coach, what would you have done?
You know, first of all, I'd do college over again because I majored in industrial management, which was Carnegie Mellon's business program.
Mhm.
And really, the only reason I did that is I thought you had to do that to get a job. I didn't know I was going to go into coaching. But if I had to do it over again, I would probably study something that I'd be more interested in.
Mhm.
So, for example, Instead of majoring in industrial management, I would have majored in potentially psychology or any number of other things.
Right.
And then what would I end up doing? I had an opportunity to go to work for Westinghouse when I graduated college, but instead went into coaching. I don't know. I guess the easiest answer would be teaching of some kind.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's probably what I would have ended up doing ultimately, even though at first I might have been in corporate America.
Yeah. But it's funny. You said psychology, you're doing that now. Teaching, you're doing that now. So, I mean, it's pretty much, you're pretty much staying in what you're staying. So you didn't fail. You didn't pass. I mean, you passed. You didn't fail. But hopefully that makes you think about some things and some very good stories and advice. But so we always end up with the last probably minute or so. Just tell us what you can say now to the booster, the Santa Clara Booster Nation, the alumni, the fans, what they can expect from this year's Broncos basketball team.
Well, the first thing I'd say is thank you. They continue to support us at unprecedented levels.
Mm-hmm.
They continue to stand together with us through any adversity or challenges we have. And so a big thank you. We continue to increase our attendances, continue to improve our environment for our home games. So we feel like we have tremendous momentum and a lot of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears have gone into that. At the same time, we've had so many former coaches and players here who have helped pave the way for those of us at Santa Clara today. So I guess, the first part would be thank you. And as a tribute, as an expression of our gratitude, we want to play the right way. We want to play as hard as we can. We want to give unconditionally great effort. And we want to, going back to an early part of our conversation, Luke, we want to play together. We want to hit the open man and do so right now, all the time.
Yeah. And how many times are you going to invite Steve Nash back to home games? Because I watched that game and that game was electric. And that's a nice thing when you're on the East, the West, the Midwest, East Coast is 10, 11 o'clock comes. There's some good basketball to be had. And I remember watching that game. That game was electric.
It really was. And ironically, you asked that. Steve's going to be here this weekend. So we're looking forward to having him at practice. He's awesome. Been just a tremendous role model for our players and somebody obviously the entire Santa Clara community reveres.
Yep. So, Coach, you're going to stick on with us for one more second. We're just going to upload. But, Coach, thanks so much. We're really excited. I love your story. I love your passion. And I love your winning ways. So I'm really excited. We're really excited to watch Santa Clara this year in the very competitive WCC. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. And we'll be back next week on the Full Court Press Podcast, a college basketball experience.